In packed courtrooms, these reckless drunk drivers finally face the full weight of the law, and their confidence collapses the moment life sentences are placed on the table. Tears, excuses, and sudden regret flood the room as they search for mercy, hoping emotion might undo the damage caused by their selfish choices. But the judges in this video are unmoved. The evidence is airtight, and as each sentence is delivered, one question hangs in the air. How do you react when there is no escape left? Number 10. Amber Pereira. April 2022 became the day that changed everything. That was when a late-night drive on Florida's Selmon Expressway turned into a courtroom reckoning that no sentence could ever fully balance. 2 years later, the shock returned not on the highway, but inside a silent, crowded courtroom, where Amber Pereira stood waiting to learn how much of her future was about to disappear. Prosecutors pressed for life in prison. Even the defense could not excuse how serious her crime was, so all they could do was argue for a fixed term of 20 years, urging for mercy. The case, however, refused to sit quietly between those numbers. The judge revisited Pereira's conduct and mindset, reminding the court that this was not a single careless second, but a chain of choices with lasting damage. Everyone sensed that the ruling would not follow a simple path. This was serious because Pereira's action cost 3 lives lost and 1 life shattered beyond repair. The court returned to the night of the crash. Pereira had been driving drunk when her car slammed into the Filippic family vehicle. Louise and Rita Filippic died at the scene, along with their 8-year-old daughter, Georgia. Their deaths were instant, final, and irreversible. A third car, driven by Tracy Kelly, was also struck. She survived, but survival came at a brutal cost: chronic pain, trauma, and a life permanently altered. The courtroom heard how the aftermath of that night still lives with her, not as memory, but as daily reality. As emotions rose, the judge shifted focus to Pereira's actions after the crash. The court concluded that her behavior showed concern for herself, rather than for the people whose lives were collapsing around her. That detail mattered. In sentencing law, character after the crime often weighs as heavily as the crime itself. Then came the decision: 50 years in prison. Not technically life, but close enough to feel like it. For the victims' families, it was not victory, only an ending to the waiting. Number 9. Benny Duarte. April 2024 marked the end of a long and painful wait inside a Santa Ana courtroom. On that day, a judge delivered a sentence of more than 50 years to life in prison for a drunk driver whose choices erased 3 young lives. What followed was an outpouring of emotions that almost turned the court chaotic. Nearly 2 years earlier, in 2022 Huntington Beach, a night of reckless decisions turned fatal. The driver, then 29-year-old Benny Duarte of San Clemente, chose to drink heavily and get behind the wheel twice that same night. Investigators later confirmed her blood alcohol level was almost 3 times the legal limit. Her car slammed into another vehicle, killing 17-year-old Brooke Hawley, 18-year-old Dylan Mack, and 17-year-old AJ Rossi instantly. By late 2023, a jury reached its verdict. Duarte was convicted of 3 counts of murder, along with driving under the influence. Prosecutors laid out a clear timeline. Access to ride services existed, warnings about drunk driving were common knowledge, and yet the decision to drive was made anyway. The courtroom heard how each choice stacked upon the next, forming a chain that could not be undone. The law now had to decide how heavy that chain would be. The most emotional moment came during sentencing in April 2024. Parents of the victims stood only feet away from the woman responsible. For the first time since the crash, they faced her directly inside the courtroom. They described shattered futures, empty bedrooms, and milestones that would never arrive. The judge listened, weighing the depth of that pain against the facts of the crime. When the sentence was announced, it was 51 years to life. There was no celebration, only tears. The judge made clear that the punishment reflected not just a crash, but a series of conscious decisions that cost so many lives. As Duarte was led away, families of the victims consoled each other as the tears continued to flow. Number 8. Jamie Lee Kamarowski. Jamie Lee Kamarowski's case stands as one of the most disturbing examples of reckless, intoxicated driving intersecting with irreversible human loss. On the night of Samantha Miller's wedding, what should have been a quiet celebration ended in catastrophe. Miller and her husband, Eric Hutchinson, were traveling in a golf cart when Kamarowski's vehicle struck them at extreme speed. Investigators later confirmed she was traveling approximately 65 miles per hour in a zone limited to 25, a margin that alone signaled criminal negligence. As investigators reconstructed the moments before impact, a pattern of extreme recklessness emerged. Police reports showed Kamarowski had been drinking heavily at multiple locations earlier that evening. Surveillance footage and witness statements placed her behind the wheel long after any reasonable person would have chosen not to drive. Data pulled from the vehicle's onboard systems revealed no meaningful braking before the collision, indicating delayed reaction or total inattention. The force of the crash destroyed the golf cart instantly, leaving no chance for those inside. Was this a sudden mistake, or the predictable end of repeated dangerous choices? The scene that followed was chaotic and emotionally devastating. First responders described a roadway scattered with debris from the wedding celebration, now turned into a crime scene. Samantha Miller was pronounced dead at the scene, still in her wedding dress. Eric Hutchinson suffered severe injuries and was hospitalized for weeks, beginning his marriage in a trauma ward instead of a honeymoon. The contrast between joy and tragedy became a central theme later emphasized in court. Toxicology results removed any doubt about impairment. Kamarowski's blood alcohol concentration was close to 3 times the legal limit, a level associated with major loss of motor control and judgment. Prosecutors presented this alongside speed analysis, road conditions, to show that the crash was avoidable. It was preventable at every stage. The charge list reflected this severity, including felony DUI causing death and serious bodily injury, each carrying substantial prison exposure. In court, family members outlined the lasting damage beyond the fatal night. Miller's relatives described a future of milestones that would never happen, while Hutchinson's injuries were detailed in medical reports showing permanent physical and emotional harm. The judge highlighted that this was not a split-second lapse, but a chain of decisions made over hours. A plea agreement spared the families a trial, but still resulted in a lengthy sentence. Kamarowski was ordered to spend decades in prison, a legal acknowledgement that recklessness at this level is treated as violence by law. Number 7. Jessica Aho. Jessica Ajo's case drew widespread attention in Miami due to both its timing and emotional weight. In April 2016, Aho ran a red light and crashed into the vehicle of 48-year-old Naji El-Koti, who was driving to work just 2 days before his wedding. The collision proved fatal. The details of that early morning crash reveal a scene of profound recklessness. According to the Miami-Dade Police Department, Aho was driving her 2011 Hyundai Sonata at a high rate of speed when she ran a red light at the intersection of SW 127 Avenue and SW 120 Street, colliding with El-Koti's Toyota Prius. The impact was so forceful that both vehicles continued on to strike a third car that was stopped nearby, turning a tragic 2-car event into a multi-vehicle collision. Emergency responders airlifted El-Koti to Kendall Regional Trauma Center, but he later succumbed to his injuries. Aho and the driver of the third vehicle sustained non-life-threatening injuries. Investigators suspected impairment almost immediately. Blood tests taken shortly after the crash showed Aho's blood alcohol content near 3 times the legal limit, and a later test confirmed cocaine was present in her system too, which heightening the sense of gross negligence she had behind the wheel. In addition to the DUI manslaughter charge, police also cited her for vehicular homicide, reckless driving, DUI causing serious bodily injury, and cocaine possession. In the ensuing criminal case, prosecutors prepared a robust file relying on traffic camera footage, toxicology analyses, and accident reconstruction experts who mapped out the sequence of events that fateful night. Defense attorneys initially considered pushing for leniency, pointing to struggles with addiction and her expressed remorse. Even so, the evidence left them with limited strategic options as Aho faced years behind bars. When the matter reached court, the human toll became unavoidable. El-Koti's widow, Jihan Haidar, delivered an emotional impact statement describing the cruel twist that the flowers chosen for their planned wedding were instead placed at his funeral. She spoke of the moments that would never come: birthdays, anniversaries, children, and the profound void left in her life. Other witnesses, including friends and family of both parties, offered contrasting depictions. Some highlighted Aho's remorse and efforts toward recovery, while others insisted that youthful age did not excuse such blatant disregard for safety. Judge Richard Hirsch ultimately balanced those emotional pleas with statutory requirements. Florida law carries a mandatory minimum sentence for DUI manslaughter, and despite arguments for a reduced term, he refused to deviate from recommended guidelines. Aho received 10.5 years in state prison, to be followed by 9 years of probation, mandatory substance abuse treatment, and 500 hours of community service, reflecting both the severity of her actions and the legal system's attempt to impose proportional consequences. Number 6. Felicia Sunshine Lazo. Felicia Sunshine Lazo's case unfolded in Dearborn, Michigan, following a high-speed collision that killed Dr. Ghada Mustafa, a respected physician and mother of 3 young children. In July 2024, Lazo drove through a red light at approximately 117 miles per hour in a zone marked for 35. The impact was immediate and fatal. Investigators reconstructed the crash using traffic signal data, vehicle damage analysis, and event data recorders. The findings left little room for dispute. Excessive speed and reckless disregard for traffic controls caused the collision. Prosecutors emphasized that the intersection was well marked and visibility was clear. During sentencing, the court heard statements describing Dr. Mustafa's dedication to her family and community. Lazo expressed remorse, but the judge focused on deterrence and public safety. She was sentenced to a prison term ranging from 6 to 15 years. For the victim's family, the sentence could not replace what was lost. Number 5. Jordan Fuss. Jordan Fuss's case demonstrated how excessive speed, combined with intoxication, transforms a vehicle into a deadly instrument. Surveillance from traffic cameras captured Fuss driving an Infiniti sedan at speeds between 92 and 108 miles per hour in a 45 mile per hour zone. Moments later, he ran a red light and struck a vehicle carrying a mother and her 6-year-old son, Santiago Mandrion. The collision was unsurvivable for the child. Investigators documented extreme impact forces consistent with high-speed travel, while toxicology reports showed Fuss's blood alcohol level was nearly 3 times the legal limit. Prosecutors charged him with DUI manslaughter, relying on video evidence, forensic reconstruction, and chemical testing. During sentencing, the court faced statutory limits under Florida's Criminal Punishment Code. Despite the gravity of the harm, the judge imposed the lowest sentence legally permissible, 14 years in prison. Number 4. Michael Ryan. Michael Ryan's conviction arose from a fatal wrong-way collision that exposed the lethal consequences of impaired and reckless driving on public highways. Driving a Toyota Tacoma in the incorrect direction on a Florida state road, Ryan collided head-on with a Toyota Tundra carrying 6 occupants. The force of the crash killed 3 people, including unborn twins and their uncle, while others suffered life-altering injuries. Crash reconstruction experts testified that the collision angle, vehicle positions, and roadway markings left little doubt that Ryan was traveling against traffic flow. Medical evidence confirmed prolonged hospitalization for survivors, including extensive surgeries and intensive care treatment. Prosecutors pursued 3 counts of vehicular manslaughter, emphasizing the foreseeability of harm when a driver ignores roadway direction. At sentencing, the court acknowledged Ryan's expression of remorse, but clarified a critical legal principle: regret does not reverse consequence. The judge noted that sentencing must reflect deterrence and public safety, not emotion alone. Ryan was sentenced to 41 years in prison, a term designed to reflect the magnitude of loss. When a single decision violates every rule of the road, how much mercy can the law afford? Number 3. Jennifer Xavier. Jennifer Xavier's case differed from the others in one crucial way. It involved not only intoxicated driving, but abandonment. In 2018, Xavier was driving along Interstate 5 near San Diego after drinking when her vehicle left the roadway and plunged into a water-filled channel. Inside the car was her best friend, 21-year-old Sydney Waller. Xavier managed to escape the submerged vehicle. Instead of calling emergency services or attempting to help, she fled the scene. First responders later arrived to find the car submerged, with Waller still trapped inside. She was rescued and transported to the hospital, but died days later from her injuries. Prosecutors charged Xavier with second-degree murder, DUI causing injury, and hit and run, resulting in death. The jury focused heavily on the decision to leave, viewing it as a conscious act rather than panic alone. At sentencing, the judge imposed 19 years to life, later increased to 23 years to life. Number 2. Blake Tellman. Blake Tellman was just 22 years old when a series of reckless decisions ended the life of Donna Chen, a 53-year-old nurse, wife, and mother of 3. On the day of the incident, Tellman had been drinking heavily, a fact later confirmed by toxicology tests showing his blood alcohol concentration at nearly 3 times the legal limit. What made the case particularly troubling was the sequence of events that followed. Court records showed Tellman had already crashed his vehicle once that night. Instead of stopping or seeking help, he fled the scene and continued driving. Minutes later, while speeding, he lost control of his vehicle, left the roadway, and struck Donna Chen as she was jogging. The impact was fatal. During sentencing, prosecutors emphasized that this was not a single mistake, but a chain of conscious choices. The defense highlighted Tellman's remorse and lack of prior violent history. The judge acknowledged his apology but stressed accountability. Tellman was sentenced to 15 years in prison, followed by 5 years of probation. Number 1. Taylor Moyes. Taylor Moyes' conviction stemmed from one of the most extreme speeding cases presented in a Florida DUI courtroom. Investigators determined that Moyes was driving approximately 109 miles per hour in a 35-mile-per-hour zone when his vehicle struck bicyclist Joshua Kidd in Tampa. The speed alone ensured there would be no meaningful chance of survival. Crash analysts relied on vehicle data, roadway measurements, and impact calculations to establish the velocity. Toxicology reports confirmed alcohol impairment at the time of the collision. Prosecutors argued that the combination of intoxication and extreme speed met the legal threshold for DUI manslaughter, emphasizing that the danger was obvious long before impact. During sentencing, the emotional testimony of the victim's family underscored the broader cost of the crime, the loss of a son, brother, and future. Moyes visibly struggled as the court reviewed the medical examiner's findings and the permanent harm caused. The judge sentenced him to 12 years in prison, followed by 11 years of probation. The case leaves a chilling question behind. When speed reaches that level, is it recklessness or a conscious gamble with human life?